For more than 12 years of your life, school prepared you for the future. You learned how to solve equations. You learned how to analyze history. You learned how the universe works, how cells divide, how governments rise and fall. But there is one question almost nobody asks. Why did school never teach you how money actually works? Not how to count it, not how to calculate percentages on a test, but how money really behaves in the real world. How wealth grows, how assets quietly multiply, how some people slowly build financial freedom, while others spend decades running in place. Think about it. For something that affects almost every decision in adult life, money is strangely absent from the education system. And the older you get, the more that realization starts to feel unsettling. Because sooner or later, almost everyone reaches a moment like this. You're working hard. You're doing what you were told was the responsible thing to do. You study, you find a job, you build a career. And yet somehow, money still feels confusing, as if there are invisible rules operating behind the scenes that nobody ever explained. Rules that some people seem to understand naturally, while others spend years trying to figure out. And that raises an uncomfortable thought. Maybe school didn't forget to teach us about money. Maybe it was never really designed to. Schools are excellent at teaching knowledge. They teach discipline. They teach structure. They teach how to follow instructions and complete tasks. But money doesn't operate according to school rules. Money is not simply mathematics. Money is behavior. Money is psychology. Money is patience. Money rewards those who understand time, systems, and long-term thinking. And those skills rarely fit neatly into a classroom. Instead, most people learn about money through experience, through mistakes, through stress, through years of trial and error. Sometimes after taking on debt. Sometimes after realizing that working harder does not always mean moving forward. Have you ever felt that? That strange sense that you're doing everything right, and yet something about money still doesn't add up. That maybe there are rules about wealth that were simply never explained. If that thought has ever crossed your mind, you're not alone. Because the truth is simple. There are lessons about money that millions of people only discover far too late. Lessons about why income alone rarely creates wealth. Lessons about why some people build assets that work for them, while others spend their lives trading time for stability. Lessons about patience, ownership, and the quiet power of long-term thinking. Once you begin to see those lessons, something interesting happens. Money stops feeling mysterious. You begin to recognize patterns. You start noticing why certain financial decisions create momentum, while others quietly create pressure. And gradually, your relationship with money begins to change. Not because you suddenly work harder, but because you finally understand how the system actually works. So as you listen to this audiobook, I want you to keep one simple question in your mind. What if the most important lessons about money were never meant to be taught in school? And more importantly, what if learning them now could completely change the way you see work, wealth, and freedom? Because money is not just something you earn, it is something you learn to understand. And once you understand it, the entire game begins to look different. Chapter 1. The Hard Work Myth. The hardest working people in the world are rarely the richest. Think about that for a moment. All around us, we see people working incredibly hard. Construction workers under the heat of the sun. Nurses working long night shifts. Farmers waking up before sunrise every single day. Factory workers standing for hours, doing repetitive labor. These people work harder than most, and yet they're rarely the wealthiest people in society. That simple observation already tells us something important. Something that quietly contradicts what most of us were taught growing up. Because from a young age, almost everyone hears the same advice. Work hard, be responsible, stay disciplined, and success will eventually follow. It sounds logical, it sounds fair, and in school, that belief often appears to work. Study harder, Yeah, your grades improve. Complete your assignments. You pass the class. Put in more effort. Your results get better. In school, effort and results are closely connected. But the world of money does not operate like a classroom. Money follows a different set of rules. And one of the most important differences is this. Money does not reward effort the way school does. Money rewards value, systems, and leverage. This is where many people unknowingly fall into what we could call the hard work trap. The trap begins with a simple exchange. You trade your time for money. At first, this seems perfectly reasonable. You get a job, you earn a salary, you gain experience, your income slowly increases. For a while, everything feels like progress. But there is a hidden limitation inside this model that very few people notice early on. Time is limited. There are only 24 hours in a day, which means that if your income depends entirely on the hours you work, your financial growth will always have a ceiling. No matter how skilled you become, no matter how dedicated you are, eventually the math stops expanding. And this is the moment when many hard-working people begin to feel a quiet frustration. They are doing everything right. They followed the path that society encouraged. They studied. They built careers. They worked overtime. They sacrificed weekends. And yet financial freedom still feels distant. Not because they lack discipline, not because they failed, but because the system they are operating in has limits built into it. To understand this better, imagine two individuals. Both are intelligent. Both are hardworking. Both start their careers at the same age. The first person follows the traditional path. They focus on improving their productivity. They work longer hours. They aim for promotions. Their income increases as their career grows, but their money is still tied directly to their time. If they stop working, the income stops too. Now imagine the second person. They also work hard, but instead of focusing only on effort, they focus on building systems. They invest, they create assets, they build something that continues producing value even when they are not actively working. At first, the first person may appear more successful. Their income arrives faster, their progress looks visible, but time slowly changes the equation. Years pass, then decades. And the second person begins to pull ahead, not because they work harder, but because the systems they built continue working without them. This difference is subtle at first, but over long periods of time it becomes enormous. And this leads to one of the most important financial realizations a person can ever have. There are two fundamentally different ways to earn money. The first is through labor. You work, you get paid. You stop working, the payment stops. The second is through systems and assets. You create something once, and it continues generating value long after the initial effort. Think about the difference between carrying buckets of water every day and building a pipeline that delivers water automatically. Both require effort, but one requires effort forever. The other requires effort only at the beginning. This is the quiet shift that separates workers from builders. Workers focus on effort, and builders focus on leverage. Workers improve productivity. Builders improve systems. And the interesting part is that schools rarely explain this difference. They prepare people extremely well for the first path. They teach discipline. They teach structure. They teach responsibility. But they rarely discuss the second path, which means that many people spend the most productive years of their lives perfecting the skill of trading time for money, without ever learning how to gradually reduce that dependence. This does not mean that work is unimportant. Work is essential. Work builds skills. Work creates experience. Work generates the first capital that allows other opportunities to exist. But work alone rarely produces lasting wealth. It is only the starting point. The real transformation begins when effort starts turning into systems, when income starts turning into assets, when time stops being the only source of money. Because once that shift begins, the relationship with money changes completely. Money stops feeling like something you chase. It becomes something you gradually design. And this realization leads to a powerful question, a question that almost nobody asks early enough. Instead of asking, how can I work harder to earn more money? What if the better question is, how can I build something today that continues producing value tomorrow? That single question changes the direction of an entire financial life. It moves attention away from effort alone and toward leverage, toward ownership, and toward systems that work quietly in the background. Because wealth, in its most durable form, rarely comes from working harder than everyone else. It comes from building systems that continue working long after the original effort is finished. Hard work creates income, but systems create wealth. And that is the first lesson about money that school almost never teaches. Chapter 2. The Income Illusion. For many people, the definition of financial success seems obvious. Earn more money. The logic feels simple. Higher income means a better life. Higher income means security. Higher income means wealth. From the moment we enter the workforce, the game appears straightforward. Get a better job. Earn a higher salary. Climb the ladder. Repeat. And if income continues to rise, success must be following. At least, that's the story most of us were taught. But there is a quiet contradiction hiding inside this belief. Some of the highest income professions in the world are filled with people who still feel financially stressed. Doctors, lawyers, corporate executives, highly paid consultants. From the outside, these careers appear extremely successful. The salaries are impressive. The lifestyles look comfortable. Yet many individuals in these positions quietly admit something surprising. Despite earning more than most people ever will, they still feel financially constrained. Their schedules are packed, their responsibilities are enormous, and the pressure to maintain their lifestyle continues to grow. How can that be possible? How can someone earning hundreds of thousands of dollars per year still feel financially trapped? The answer lies in a distinction that school rarely explains. Income and wealth are not the same thing. In fact, they're often completely different. Income is money you earn. Wealth is money that works for you. This difference may sound small, but it changes everything. Because income is active, wealth is independent. Income requires effort. Wealth survives without it. If your lifestyle depends entirely on your income, until you are constantly running on what could be called a financial treadmill, the faster you run, the faster your lifestyle expands. The nicer apartment, the better car, the more expensive vacations. At first, these upgrades feel like progress, and in many ways, they are. But something subtle begins to happen as income rises. Expectations rise with it. The cost of maintaining that lifestyle grows, and suddenly, the same income that once felt abundant begins to feel ordinary. This pattern has a name: lifestyle inflation. It is one of the most common financial traps in modern society, and it works quietly. No dramatic mistakes, no obvious financial disasters. Just a gradual increase in spending that grows alongside income. Year after year, promotion after promotion, until one day a strange realization appears. Despite earning more money than ever before, financial freedom still feels distant. Why? Because income alone does not create wealth. Income only creates the possibility of wealth. What actually creates wealth is what happens after income arrives. Does it disappear into consumption, or does it gradually transform into assets? This is the question that separates two completely different financial lives. Consider two people who earn the same salary. Both make $100,000 per year. From the outside, their financial situations look identical, but their decisions begin to create very different futures. The first person spends most of what they earn, not irresponsibly, just naturally. A comfortable apartment, a nice car, regular upgrades to lifestyle. At the end of each month, there is little left, and the second person lives slightly below their means. They invest part of their income. They slowly accumulate assets. Nothing dramatic. Just consistent decisions repeated over time. At first, the difference between these two individuals seems small, almost invisible. But time changes the equation. 5 years pass, then 10, then 20. The first person still depends entirely on their income. If the income stops, the lifestyle collapses. The second person has built something different. Their assets begin producing income. Dividends, interest, returns. Slowly, quietly, their financial life becomes less dependent on their labor. The difference between these two paths is not intelligence. It is not talent. It is not even income. It is understanding the difference between earning money and building wealth. And once that difference becomes clear, something interesting happens. Income stops being the final goal. It becomes the fuel, the raw material, the starting point of a much larger strategy. Because income by itself has limits, but assets can grow far beyond the effort that created them. This is why some people earning moderate incomes eventually become financially free, while others earning extremely high salaries remain dependent on their jobs for decades. The difference is not how much they earned. The difference is what they built. And this realization leads to a powerful shift in thinking. Instead of asking, "How can I increase my income?" a more important question appears. How can I turn my income into assets? That single question changes the direction of financial life. Income becomes a tool, assets become the destination, and once assets begin growing, something remarkable happens. Time starts working in your favor. Instead of working only for money, money slowly begins working for you. This is the moment when the illusion of income disappears and the real structure of wealth becomes visible. Because in the long run, wealth is rarely built by those who earn the most. It is built by those who convert income into assets the most consistently. Income creates opportunity, but assets create freedom. And understanding that difference is the second lesson about money that school almost never teaches. Chapter 3. The Hidden Power of Compounding. There is a force in the world of money that is so powerful, so consistent, and so transformative that many investors consider it the single most important principle in finance. Yet, surprisingly, most people barely understand it. They may have heard the term before. They may remember it briefly appearing in a math class. But the true impact of this force is rarely explained in a way that reveals how life-changing it can be. That force is compounding. At first glance, compounding seems simple. Money earns returns. Those returns generate additional returns. Over time, the growth begins to accelerate. But what most people fail to realize is how dramatically time magnifies this process. Because compounding does not grow in a straight line. It grows exponentially. And exponential growth has a strange property. For a long time, it appears almost invisible. Progress looks small, slow, even disappointing. But then something subtle begins to happen. The curve starts bending upward. Growth begins accelerating, and eventually the results become astonishing. Imagine two people starting their financial lives at the same time. Both are disciplined. Both invest consistently. Both earn similar returns, but one person begins investing at 25. The other begins at 35, just 10 years apart. Nothing dramatic, nothing extreme. Yet over the course of several decades, that small difference can produce outcomes that are almost impossible to ignore. The earlier investor often ends up with twice the wealth, sometimes even more. Not because they invested more money, not because they were smarter, but because they gave compounding something incredibly valuable. Time. Time is the fuel that powers compounding. Without time, compounding barely moves. With time, compounding becomes unstoppable. This is why some of the most successful investors in history did not necessarily earn the highest annual returns. What they had instead was patience. They allowed compounding to operate quietly for decades, and the results eventually became extraordinary. But compounding is not only about money. That is one of the most overlooked aspects of this principle. Compounding appears everywhere in life. Skills compound, knowledge compounds, reputation compounds, relationships compound. Small efforts repeated consistently create results that look almost miraculous over long periods of time. Think about learning a new skill. At the beginning, progress feels slow. You practice, you study, you struggle. Improvement is difficult to notice, but after months and years of consistent effort, something changes. The skill begins to feel natural. What once seemed impossible becomes effortless. This is compounding in action. The same principle appears in health. A single workout does not transform the body. A single healthy meal does not change a life. But thousands of small decisions, repeated consistently, create dramatic results over time. Financial compounding works the same way. Small investments, repeated regularly, allowed to grow patiently. At first, the results appear insignificant. A few $100s, a few thousand. Nothing that feels extraordinary. And this is exactly the moment when many people lose patience, because human psychology struggles with slow progress. We prefer quick results. We prefer visible rewards. We prefer instant gratification. But compounding rewards the opposite behavior. It rewards patience, it rewards consistency, it rewards long-term thinking. This is why some of the wealthiest individuals in the world appear surprisingly calm about investing. They are not chasing rapid gains. They are not trying to double their money overnight. Instead, they focus on protecting the process. They invest steadily. They avoid catastrophic mistakes, and they allow time to do the heavy lifting. In fact, one of the greatest advantages compounding provides is not speed. It is inevitability. When small gains accumulate year after year, the results eventually become difficult to stop. The snowball grows larger, momentum increases, and each year begins to produce more growth than the previous one. This is why the early years of compounding often feel frustrating. The snowball is still small, the results are modest, but every small gain adds another layer, and eventually the snowball becomes powerful enough to roll on its own. At that point, growth begins accelerating dramatically, and people looking from the outside often misunderstand what they see. They assume the success appeared suddenly. They assume luck was involved. They assume the person discovered some special secret. But what they are really seeing is decades of compounding finally becoming visible. The truth is that compounding rarely looks impressive at the beginning. Its magic only becomes obvious much later, which leads to an important realization. The earlier you start, the more powerful compounding becomes. Not because of the money itself, but because of the years available for growth. Every year you delay reduces the time compounding has to operate. And every year you begin earlier multiplies the effect. This is why financial success often has less to do with brilliance and more to do with behavior. People who succeed with compounding are not necessarily the most intelligent investors. They are simply the most patient. They understand that wealth is rarely created by dramatic decisions. It is usually built through small actions, repeated consistently over long periods of time. And once you truly understand this principle, something interesting happens. You stop searching for shortcuts. You stop chasing financial excitement. You start respecting time. Because time, when combined with consistent action, becomes the most powerful partner in wealth creation. Money compounds, skills compound, knowledge compounds, relationships compound, life itself compounds. And recognizing that truth is the third lesson about money that school almost never teaches. Chapter 4. The Lifestyle Trap. Something interesting often happens when people start earning more money. At first, the increase feels exciting. The first raise, the first promotion, the first moment when income begins to rise faster than basic expenses. It feels like progress. And in many ways, it is. But there is a pattern that quietly follows income growth almost everywhere in the modern world. A pattern that slowly erodes financial freedom without most people even noticing. As income rises, so does lifestyle. A slightly nicer apartment, a newer car, more expensive vacations, better restaurants, more convenience. None of these decisions seem reckless. In fact, they often feel completely reasonable. After all, what is the point of working harder if life does not improve? And this is where the trap begins. Because lifestyle rarely grows in small, controlled steps. It expands quickly, almost automatically. The moment income increases, expectations increase as well. What once felt like a luxury slowly becomes normal. What once felt exciting becomes routine. And what once felt expensive suddenly feels necessary. This process has a name. Lifestyle inflation. It is one of the most powerful forces working against long-term wealth. But the reason it is so dangerous is because it does not look dangerous. There is no dramatic financial collapse, no sudden crisis. Just a slow expansion of spending that quietly absorbs every increase in income. Month after month, year after year, until something strange begins to happen. Even as income grows, financial freedom still feels far away, and many people earning far more than they ever imagined still feel financially pressured. Their expenses grow alongside their income, their responsibilities expand, their commitments multiply, and the lifestyle they built becomes something they must constantly maintain. The result is a hidden form of financial pressure, not poverty, but dependency. The lifestyle becomes a machine that requires continuous income to operate. And the larger the lifestyle becomes, the harder it is to step away from it. Consider two individuals whose careers progress in similar ways. Both begin earning moderate incomes. Both receive promotions over time. Both eventually reach comfortable salaries. But their financial futures slowly begin to diverge. The first person upgrades their life every time income rises. A larger apartment, a more expensive car, more subscriptions, more consumption. None of these choices seem irresponsible. They simply reflect the natural desire to enjoy success. But over time, the result becomes clear. Expenses rise to match income, savings remain small, assets grow slowly, if at all. The second person makes a different decision. They allow their lifestyle to grow, but much more slowly than their income. When their income rises, they do not immediately upgrade everything. Instead, they create a gap between what they earn and what they spend. And that gap becomes the seed of wealth. It is invested, it buys assets, it compounds over time. At first, the difference between these two individuals appears small, almost invisible. Their lifestyles look similar, their careers look similar, their incomes are nearly identical. But time slowly reveals the consequences of their decisions. Years pass, then decades. The first person remains dependent on their income. The second person becomes increasingly supported by their assets. One path leads to consumption, the other leads to ownership. This is the quiet dividing line between financial pressure and financial freedom. And the difference is rarely income. It is behavior. Lifestyle inflation is powerful because it appeals to something deeply human. The desire for status, the desire for comfort, the desire to reward ourselves after years of effort. Social comparison amplifies this effect even further. When we see others upgrading their lives, new homes, new cars, luxury travel, it becomes easy to believe that we should be doing the same. But the visible signs of wealth are often the least reliable indicators of actual wealth. In fact, many of the wealthiest individuals live surprisingly modest lives. Not because they lack money, but because they understand something important. Every dollar spent on consumption is a dollar that cannot become an asset. Every permanent lifestyle upgrade increases the financial pressure of the future, and every increase in fixed expenses reduces freedom. This does not mean that money should never be enjoyed. Life is meant to be lived. Experiences matter. Comfort matters. But the key difference lies in proportion. When lifestyle grows faster than assets, financial pressure grows. When assets grow faster than lifestyle, freedom grows. And this is the balance that quietly shapes financial lives. Some people spend their entire careers upgrading their lifestyle. Others spend their careers upgrading their balance sheet. The first path looks impressive in the short term. The second path becomes powerful in the long term. Because wealth is rarely built by spending everything you earn, it is built by protecting the gap between income and lifestyle. That gap is where assets are born. That gap is where compounding begins. That gap is where financial independence slowly takes shape. And once you begin to see lifestyle inflation for what it really is, something interesting happens. Upgrades become less automatic. Spending becomes more intentional. And financial decisions begin shifting toward ownership rather than consumption. Because the real purpose of income is not just to upgrade life today, it is to create freedom tomorrow. And in understanding that difference is the fourth lesson about money that school almost never teaches. Chapter 5. The Asset Rule. At some point in life, most people begin asking a familiar question: how can I earn more money? It seems like the obvious path toward financial progress. Higher income means greater possibilities. Higher income means a more comfortable life. And in the early stages of a career, focusing on income is often the right move. But there is a deeper question that far fewer people ask. A question that quietly separates financial stability from financial freedom. Instead of asking how to earn more money, the more important question is this: how can I turn my money into assets? This question leads to one of the most important financial principles ever discovered. A principle so simple that it often surprises people when they first hear it, yet powerful enough to completely reshape how wealth is built. And the principle is known as the asset rule, and it can be summarized in a single sentence. Wealth grows when you own things that produce income. That may sound obvious, but most people spend their financial lives doing the opposite. They earn money, and then they spend it. Sometimes on necessities, sometimes on comforts, sometimes on luxuries that signal success. But very little of that money is transformed into something that continues producing value, which means that every month begins the same way. Income arrives, expenses follow, and the cycle repeats. But assets change that cycle. Assets are different from ordinary purchases because they continue working long after the money used to acquire them is gone. They generate income, they grow in value, they create opportunities. In other words, as assets turn money into something that can produce more money. And once that process begins, the relationship with income starts to change. Income stops being the final goal. It becomes the fuel for acquiring assets. But to understand why this principle is so powerful, it helps to understand a second idea that is rarely explained clearly: the difference between assets and liabilities. Many people assume the difference is simply about value. Expensive things are assets, cheap things are not. But the real distinction is much simpler. An asset puts money into your pocket. A liability takes money out of your pocket. That definition changes how many everyday purchases appear. A luxury car may look impressive, but if it requires ongoing payments, insurance, maintenance, and depreciation, it behaves more like a liability than an asset. And a house can be both. If it produces rental income, it becomes an asset. If it only consumes money through mortgage payments and maintenance, it behaves differently. Assets are not defined by appearance. They are defined by behavior. They generate value. And once someone begins looking at money through that lens, something interesting happens. Spending habits begin to shift. The question changes from what can I buy, to something far more powerful. What can I own that produces income? That single shift in thinking changes the direction of financial life. Instead of consuming everything earned, part of each paycheck begins moving toward ownership. Stocks, businesses, rental property, intellectual property, digital products, anything that continues producing value long after the initial effort. At first, these assets may seem small, and a few investments, a small side project, perhaps a modest portfolio slowly growing over time. But something remarkable happens when assets accumulate. They begin producing income of their own. Dividends arrive, rent arrives, returns appear, and that income can then purchase more assets, which produce even more income. The process begins to resemble the compounding principle discussed earlier, but now the compounding is not just happening inside investments, it is happening inside the entire financial structure of life. Assets generate income. Income buys more assets. More assets generate more income. Over time, the system begins strengthening itself, and eventually something extraordinary becomes possible. Income no longer needs to come entirely from labor. Part of it begins coming from ownership. This is the moment when financial independence begins to move from theory into reality. Because the true purpose of assets is not simply growth, it is freedom. Freedom from depending entirely on a paycheck. Freedom from the pressure of constant labor. Freedom to make decisions based on long-term goals rather than short-term survival. This is why many financially successful individuals focus obsessively on acquiring assets. They understand that income alone rarely creates lasting wealth. Income is temporary. Assets are durable. Income stops when work stops. Assets can continue producing value for decades. And once someone experiences the difference between these two sources of money, their perspective shifts permanently. They stop measuring success purely by salary. They begin measuring it by ownership. How many assets exist, how much income those assets produce, how much of life is supported by systems rather than effort. This way of thinking transforms financial decisions. Every dollar begins asking a silent question. Will this dollar disappear into consumption, or will it become an asset? Over time, those decisions accumulate, and the results become visible. Some people spend their lives increasing their lifestyle. Others spend their lives increasing their assets. Both paths require effort. Both paths require discipline. But only one path gradually reduces financial pressure. Because the moment assets begin producing income consistently, something powerful happens. Work becomes optional, not immediately, not dramatically, but gradually, piece by piece, year by year. The dependence on income slowly decreases, and freedom quietly increases. That is the long-term power of the asset rule. Wealth does not come from earning money. Wealth comes from owning things that produce money. And once that principle becomes clear, every financial decision begins to look different. Because the question is no longer, how much did you earn? The real question becomes, what do you own? And understanding that difference is the fifth lesson about money that school almost never teaches. Chapter 6. The Psychology of Money. Most people believe that success with money is primarily about intelligence. They assume that the people who build wealth must simply understand finance better. They must know more about markets, more about investing, more about economics. And while knowledge certainly helps, there is a surprising truth that many experienced investors eventually discover. Financial success is rarely determined by intelligence alone. It is far more often determined by behavior. In fact, some of the most financially successful individuals in the world are not necessarily the most intellectually brilliant. They are simply the most emotionally disciplined. Because money decisions are rarely made in calm, logical environments. They are made under pressure. They are made during uncertainty. They are made while emotions are pulling in different directions. Fear, greed, hope, regret. All of these emotions influence how people handle money. And when those emotions take control, even intelligent decisions can quickly turn into costly mistakes. Consider what happens during a financial market boom. Prices are rising everywhere. Stories of success appear constantly. Friends talk about investments that doubled or tripled. News headlines celebrate new opportunities. During moments like these, a powerful psychological force begins to spread: the fear of missing out. People who were previously cautious suddenly begin taking risks. They invest in things they barely understand. They increase their exposure because everyone else seems to be winning. Logic quietly steps aside. Emotion takes the wheel. And for a while, everything appears to work. Prices continue rising. Confidence grows. Until eventually, the cycle reaches its turning point. Markets fall, uncertainty returns, and suddenly the same investors who felt fearless just months earlier become terrified. They sell, they panic, they abandon strategies that once seemed perfectly reasonable. The same emotions that pushed them into the market now push them out of it, and the pattern repeats across generations. Boom, excitement, overconfidence, collapse, fear, recovery. The cycle has appeared countless times throughout financial history, and it reveals something important about money. Financial outcomes are rarely determined by who understands the most. They are determined by who manages their behavior the best. And this is why two people with identical financial knowledge can produce completely different results. One person remains patient, the other becomes reactive. One person sticks to a long-term strategy, the other constantly changes direction. Over time, those behavioral differences become enormous, and this is why some of the most successful investors emphasize a surprisingly simple rule. Avoid big mistakes. That may sound obvious, but in practice, avoiding big mistakes requires emotional control. It requires resisting the urge to chase trends, resisting the urge to panic during uncertainty, resisting the urge to compare your financial life to others. Comparison, in particular, has become one of the most powerful psychological pressures in modern finance. In the past, people compared themselves primarily to neighbors and colleagues. Today, social media exposes individuals to an endless stream of apparent success. Luxury lifestyles, rapid financial wins, entrepreneurs claiming overnight breakthroughs, investors celebrating massive gains. And even though many of these stories represent only the most visible outcomes, they still shape perception. They create the illusion that wealth appears quickly and dramatically. But real wealth rarely works that way. It grows slowly, quietly, often invisibly, for years before the results become noticeable. The challenge is that human psychology prefers excitement. We are naturally drawn to dramatic stories, fast success, unexpected breakthroughs, but financial stability often looks boring. Consistent investing, long-term thinking, controlled spending, avoiding unnecessary risk, these behaviors rarely attract attention. Yet they are the behaviors that quietly build wealth. This is why emotional discipline becomes one of the most valuable financial skills a person can develop. The ability to remain calm when others are euphoric. The ability to remain patient when progress feels slow. The ability to stay committed to long-term plans even when short-term outcomes fluctuate. These skills are rarely taught in school, but they play a powerful role in financial life. Because markets will always fluctuate. Economic conditions will always change. Unexpected events will always appear. The people who succeed financially are not those who predict every change correctly. They are those who build strategies that can survive uncertainty. They focus less on predicting the future and more on protecting themselves from catastrophic mistakes. And that mindset leads to a powerful shift in perspective. Instead of trying to be the smartest investor in the room, the goal becomes something simpler. Become the most consistent. Consistency compounds. Discipline compounds. Patience compounds, just like money itself. And over time, these behaviors begin producing results that appear almost effortless from the outside. People see the outcome, but they rarely see the years of emotional discipline that made those outcomes possible. Because the truth about money is not just about assets, income, or compounding. It is also about self-control. The ability to think long-term in a world that constantly encourages short-term reactions. The ability to remain steady when uncertainty appears. And the ability to focus on principles rather than noise. Once someone develops that mindset, something interesting happens. Financial decisions become calmer, more deliberate, less reactive. And the journey toward wealth begins to feel less like a race and more like a process. Because money, in many ways, is a reflection of behavior. And learning to manage behavior is the sixth lesson about money that school almost never teaches. Chapter 7. The Freedom Principle. For most of our lives, wealth is described in very simple terms. More money, a higher salary, a larger bank account. From the outside, it seems obvious. The more money someone has, the wealthier they must be. But as people gain experience with money, many begin to realize something surprising. Money alone does not always create the life they expected. There are people with impressive incomes who still feel trapped by their schedules. They work long hours, they carry enormous responsibilities. Their lifestyles appear successful, but their time is tightly controlled. Their freedom is limited. And then there are others who earn far less, yet appear calmer, more relaxed, more in control of their time. They may not have enormous fortunes, but they have something else: space, choice, the ability to decide how their days are spent. This observation reveals a powerful truth that is rarely discussed in traditional education. Wealth is not simply about money. Wealth is about freedom. Specifically, the freedom to control your time. Time is the one resource that cannot be replaced. You can lose money and earn it again. You can lose opportunities and discover new ones. But time moves in only one direction. Every day passes only once. And this is why many people who achieve financial success eventually shift their definition of wealth. They begin measuring wealth not just in dollars, but in years of freedom. How long could they live comfortably without depending entirely on a paycheck? A few months? A year? 10 years? The answer to that question reveals far more about financial stability than income alone. Is someone earning a large salary but living paycheck to paycheck may appear successful, but their financial runway is extremely short. A disruption to income can quickly create pressure. In contrast, someone with moderate income but substantial assets may have years of financial flexibility. They may have built systems that support their lifestyle. Investments, businesses, assets that generate income quietly in the background. This is why the most thoughtful financial strategies focus not only on growth but also on independence. The goal is not simply to accumulate money. The goal is to create options. Options to choose meaningful work. Options to take breaks when necessary. Options to pursue interests that are not purely driven by financial survival. This shift in perspective changes how people approach financial decisions. Up early in a career, the focus is often on maximizing income. Later, the focus begins to change. The question becomes less about earning the most money and more about creating the most freedom. Because the moment someone gains control over their time, the entire structure of life changes. Decisions become less rushed. Stress begins to decline. Long-term thinking becomes easier. This is why many financially successful individuals eventually begin prioritizing flexibility over status. They care less about appearances, less about impressing others, and more about designing a life that feels balanced and intentional. Ironically, this kind of wealth often looks very quiet from the outside. There may be no luxury cars, no extravagant displays, no obvious signals of financial power. But behind the scenes, there is something far more valuable: security, calm, the ability to wake up in the morning and decide what truly matters. This kind of freedom is not built overnight. It emerges slowly through years of careful decisions, saving consistently, investing patiently, avoiding unnecessary financial pressure, allowing assets to grow quietly in the background. And over time, these decisions accumulate into something powerful. The distance between income and survival begins to expand. A person no longer needs every paycheck immediately. Their financial systems begin supporting them. And with that support comes a profound shift in mindset. Work becomes a choice rather than a necessity. People continue working not because they must, but because they want to. They choose projects that interest them. They choose environments that align with their values. They choose schedules that allow space for family, health, and personal growth. This is the true meaning of financial freedom. It is not the absence of work. It is the absence of dependence. The freedom principle reminds us that money is not the final goal. Money is simply a tool that allows us to shape our lives with greater intention. Without that perspective, it is easy to fall into a common trap. Spending decades pursuing higher income, only to realize later that the time required to maintain that income consumed the very life we hope to enjoy. This is why many people who achieve financial independence eventually describe the experience in similar ways. They do not say that they suddenly felt richer. They say they felt lighter, more relaxed, less pressured. Because financial independence removes one of the most powerful sources of stress in modern life: the fear of running out of money. Once that fear begins to fade, people rediscover something simple but important. Life becomes more than just earning. It becomes about living. And that realization leads to a powerful question. If wealth is ultimately about freedom, then how much money is truly enough? For some people, the answer may be enormous. For others, it may be surprisingly modest. But the important point is that wealth begins to take on a different meaning. It becomes less about accumulation and more about alignment. Does the way you earn money support the life you want to live? Do your financial systems create pressure or reduce it? Do your assets expand your freedom or simply expand your lifestyle? These questions shift the entire purpose of financial thinking. Money stops being the center of life. Instead, it becomes the structure that supports a meaningful life. And when that perspective takes hold, something powerful happens. Financial decisions become simpler because the goal is no longer endless accumulation. The goal becomes freedom. Freedom to choose, freedom to explore, freedom to spend time on what truly matters. And understanding that freedom is the real purpose of wealth is the seventh lesson about money that school almost never teaches. Chapter 8. The Quiet Wealth Strategy. When people imagine wealth, the images that usually come to mind are dramatic. Luxury homes, exotic vacations, expensive cars, stories of overnight success. The media loves these stories because they are exciting. They create headlines. They capture attention. But if you study how most long-term wealth is actually built, the reality looks very different. Real wealth is usually quiet. It grows slowly, often invisibly, and for long periods of time it looks almost boring. This may sound surprising, especially in a world that constantly celebrates rapid success. But financial history repeatedly shows the same pattern. People who build sustainable wealth rarely do it through dramatic wins. They do it through consistent behavior over long periods of time. Small decisions, repeated again and again, year after year. This is what could be called the quiet wealth strategy. It does not depend on luck. It does not depend on sudden breakthroughs. And it certainly does not depend on taking enormous risks. Instead, it relies on a few simple principles applied patiently over time. The first principle is consistency. Consistent saving, consistent investing, consistent discipline. Many people underestimate the power of consistency because its effects are slow at first. The early years of financial progress often look uneventful. Investments grow modestly. Assets accumulate gradually. There are no dramatic turning points. But this is exactly how compounding works. Small actions repeated regularly eventually produce large outcomes, and the longer consistency continues, the more powerful the results become. The second principle of quiet wealth is patience. In a culture that constantly encourages speed, patience has become a rare financial advantage. Markets fluctuate, economies change, unexpected events occur, and during those moments, impatient investors often make costly decisions. They panic during downturns, they chase trends during booms, they abandon long-term strategies because short-term outcomes feel uncomfortable. But patient investors behave differently. They understand that temporary volatility is part of the process. Instead of reacting emotionally, they stay committed to the long-term structure of their strategy. And over decades, that patience becomes one of the most valuable assets they possess. The third principle is simplicity. Many people believe financial success requires complicated strategies, complex trading systems, constant market predictions, sophisticated financial models. But the truth is often far simpler. Most successful investors follow surprisingly straightforward approaches. They invest consistently, they diversify, they control spending, they allow time to work in their favor, they focus less on predicting the future and more on building resilient systems. Simplicity reduces mistakes. And in finance, avoiding mistakes is often more important than achieving perfection. The fourth principle of quiet wealth is resilience. Financial life will always include uncertainty. Markets will decline, opportunities will fail, unexpected challenges will appear. No strategy can eliminate uncertainty completely, but resilient financial structures can survive it. This is why thoughtful investors focus not only on growth, but also on protection. They maintain financial margins. They avoid excessive debt. They prepare for volatility. Because surviving difficult periods is often the key to benefiting from long-term growth. The final principle may be the most important. Focus on what truly matters. Many people spend years pursuing financial goals that are heavily influenced by social comparison. They chase visible symbols of success, larger homes, more expensive lifestyles, more impressive appearances. But the quiet wealth strategy asks a different question. What kind of life are you actually trying to build? Because wealth without clarity can easily become a never-ending pursuit. More income, more possessions, more status, without ever reaching a sense of enough. But when financial goals are aligned with personal values, something changes. Money becomes a tool rather than a scoreboard. It supports meaningful experiences. It protects stability. It creates space for family, health, creativity, and personal growth. And this is often the final realization people reach after years of financial experience. The real value of wealth is not consumption. It is freedom. Freedom from constant financial pressure. Freedom to make thoughtful decisions. Freedom to design life intentionally. And when wealth is built quietly and patiently, it tends to last longer because it was never dependent on fragile shortcuts. It was built through systems, through discipline, through time. From the outside, this process rarely looks exciting. There are no dramatic moments, no sudden transformations. But beneath the surface, something powerful is happening. Assets are growing, income streams are forming, financial independence is slowly taking shape, and eventually the results become visible, not in flashy displays, but in something far more valuable: calm, stability, confidence about the future. Because the quiet wealth strategy does not promise overnight success. Instead, it offers something far more reliable: a path, a structure, a way of thinking about money that prioritizes long-term freedom over short-term excitement. And that may be the most important lesson of all. Wealth is not built in moments. It is built in habits. Quiet habits, repeated consistently over time. And understanding that quiet process of wealth creation is the 8th lesson about money that school almost never teaches. Before we finish, let's return to the question we asked at the very beginning. Why did school never teach us these lessons about money? Why did we spend more than a decade studying subjects designed to prepare us for life, yet graduate without understanding one of the most powerful forces shaping that life? The truth may be uncomfortable, but it is worth thinking about. Traditional education was never really designed to teach financial independence. Schools prepare people to work. They teach discipline, structure, and knowledge, all of which are valuable. But the deeper mechanics of money, ownership, assets, compounding, financial behavior, are rarely part of that system. And as a result, millions of intelligent, hardworking people enter adult life with a strange disadvantage. They understand how to earn money, but they were never taught how money actually works. So they learn through experience, through mistakes, through years of trial and error, sometimes through financial stress, sometimes through opportunities missed simply because the rules of the game were never explained clearly. But here is the good news. Financial education does not have to come from a classroom. It can begin at any moment. It begins the moment you start asking better questions about money. Questions like, what is the difference between income and wealth? How can income become assets? How does compounding quietly reshape the future? How does behavior influence financial decisions more than intelligence? And perhaps the most important question of all, what is the real purpose of wealth? Because as we explored throughout this audiobook, wealth is not simply about accumulating money. It is about freedom. Freedom to control your time. Freedom to make thoughtful decisions. Freedom from the constant pressure of financial uncertainty. And that freedom is rarely created through dramatic financial victories. It is built quietly, through consistent habits, through patient thinking, through small decisions repeated over many years. That idea may not sound exciting. It may not promise overnight transformation, but it is real, it is durable, and it has shaped the financial lives of countless individuals who learn to think about money differently. If there is one message worth remembering from everything we discussed, it may be this. Money is not just something you earn. Money is something you learn. And once you begin understanding the principles behind it, your relationship with money changes. You stop chasing short-term excitement. You start building long-term stability. You stop measuring success purely by income. You begin measuring it by ownership, by time, by freedom. And over time, those shifts quietly reshape your entire financial future. So before we end, I want to ask you something. If you could go back 10 or 15 years, which of these lessons about money would you most want to know earlier? Would it be the idea that hard work alone rarely builds wealth? The realization that income and wealth are completely different? The power of compounding over long periods of time? Or the understanding that true wealth is really about freedom? Everyone's answer may be different, but simply asking those questions is often the beginning of a much deeper financial awareness. Because once you start thinking about money this way, you begin to see the world differently. Opportunities look different, decisions feel different. Time itself begins to feel more valuable, and that awareness is something no system can take away from you. Because real financial education does not end when the audiobook ends. It continues every time you make a decision about saving, investing, spending, or building. Every small decision becomes part of a larger structure, a structure that gradually shapes the future you will live in. And that future does not appear overnight. Like everything we discussed today, it grows quietly. Decision by decision, year by year, until one day you realize that the lessons about money school never taught have become the foundation of a life designed on your own terms.